Michaela Chester here with Alberto Camargo. He is our NCAA.com soccer beat reporter. We're going to talk about the soccer season so far, look ahead to the future, and then, of course, as always, some predictions, Alberto. I know you're probably not looking forward to those, but let's start with men's. Surprises, not surprises. What have you seen so far this season?
Yeah, Michaela, thank you for having me on. I think the main surprise for men's soccer so far this season has been Syracuse. This is a team that is, in the ACC conference that anyone would consider the best in men's soccer. They were picked to finish fourth in their division, ninth overall in the conference. That's fourth from the bottom, and they're currently in the top five of the most recent United Soccer Coaches rankings. They're led by a duo of Levante Johnson and Nathan Opoku, two guys who have each contributed 20 points to the offense, a combination of goals and assists. They're 5-1 against ranked opposition this year. Their only loss was non-conference, so they're undefeated against ranked teams in their conference. That includes their kind of coming out party, a win against Clemson on the road, and then a win at home against then number 4 Wake Forest. So I think the Orange have been the biggest surprise by far in men's soccer for me this season. As far as what I'm not surprised by, it's Washington. They're currently number 1 in the country. These are the national runners-up from last year. And they've been riding not only one of the best defenses in the country, tied for third best goals against average, they're also one of the top scoring offenses in the country, also in the top 5 of goals scored. And it's a team that clearly we saw them make it to the final last year of the College Cup. They came up just short to Clemson, but they've rebounded. They've been playing with a chip on their shoulder, and I think they have a chance to win it all again this year.
All right. How about women's? I know we've had a lot of craziness in women's soccer. So what has not surprised you and surprised you over there?
Yeah, speaking of the craziness, I'll actually start with what I'm not surprised by, and that's the ACC, as I told you before, being a bloodbath this year. There are 6 teams currently ranked in the NCAA committee's top 10, the first time they've done that this year. And those 6 teams are most likely going to be the 6 in the conference tournament in just a couple weeks here. And it's going to be knockout soccer, everyone trying to vie for the automatic qualification to the tournament. Not that they're not going to make it to the tournament, I'm sure they will. But that conference has been, again, like I mentioned, the word I like to use is bloodbath. Maybe that's a bit of a word that we might not like to use, but that's the accurate way to describe that conference. There have been so many surprising results. My favorite example is Duke. They are currently still ranked in the top 10. They have 4 losses to their name, and all 4 teams that they lost to are above them in the committee's rankings. So that's North Carolina, Florida State, Virginia, and UCLA, who is not even in conference, but they've beaten 2 of the best teams from the ACC as well. So that's what I'm not surprised by. The surprise from women's soccer is actually in the SEC. It's Alabama. They're having their best season in program history, currently ranked number 3 in the United Soccer Coaches rankings. They're ranked number 1 by Top Drawer Soccer. And they have been a complete surprise this season. I was not expecting them to be as high as they are. Like Syracuse on the men's side, they were picked to finish, middle of the table in the SEC preseason, and now they have 2 players who are standing out in Riley Parker and Felicia Knox, 2 players who I'll speak about in a little bit more later.
All right, what about the rest of the season? Obviously, a lot to look forward to. Let's start with men's. Most exciting thing you're ready to see play out?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the story behind Washington, right? Like I mentioned, runners-up last season, made it all the way to the final, and goalkeeper Sam Fowler made a bit of a howler, no pun intended, or no rhyme intended there, to give up the first goal in the final to Clemson. He is a goalkeeper who had been sturdy throughout the entire season, made that mistake, but has rebounded to lead, like I mentioned, one of the best defenses in the country so far this season. And for storyline purposes, I think Washington making it all the way to the final of the College Cup again, and Sam Fowler and that defense having the chance to redeem themselves would be probably the best storyline, I think, on the men's side. Moving over to women's, it may seem cliche, but North Carolina making it all the way back to the final, to the College Cup, and perhaps winning what I believe would be their 22nd national championship in program history. It's been 10 years since they last won one. I know Coach Dorrance is hungry for another, and all the girls on that team are as well. I think that the Tar Heels making it back to the College Cup final in North Carolina, just outside of Raleigh, near Chapel Hill, would be probably the best storyline in my opinion.
And I'm sure super excited for the ACC tournament on the women's side. Come on.
Yeah, that's going to be, like I mentioned, I have no idea how that's going to play out. I'm sure that by the time the tournament is over, we might have another, national title contender, whether it be one of the juggernauts like North Carolina, Florida State, or Duke, or a team like Notre Dame, who I was also not expecting to be as good as they are this year, but they're right up there with the rest in the ACC.
All right, time for some predictions. My favorite part, maybe not yours, but we're going to do it. How about some player of the year candidates? Let's do some Mac Hermann candidates, picks for you. Let's start with men's and then go to women's.
Yeah, starting with men's, Duke, they are currently ranked third in the country, led in goals by Shakur Mohammed. He leads with 9 goals for one of the highest scoring teams in the country. I think that he deserves some consideration for the Mac Hermann Trophy, as well as one of Sam Fowler's teammates on Washington, Lucas Meek. He's a senior who leads the team with 9 goals as well, 8 assists. So he's the center point of that offense for the #1 team in the country. He also deserves some plaudits as well for that. I think personal favorite, you might not be in the running, but the player I love watching the most is Cooper Flax for Wake Forest. He's an attacking midfielder who that's just a name, really. He plays anywhere in the midfield. He can play up as a second striker. He's a very fun player to watch, and he's only a freshman, so we got plenty of more years from him in men's soccer. As far as the Mac Hermann Trophy for women's, I think that the duo of Riley Parker and Felicia Knox for Alabama, they may take some votes away from each other, actually. They've both been incredible. Felicia Knox leads the country in assists with 14. Riley Parker's up there in the top 10 in goals with, I believe she has 11 at this point. They're both, in my opinion, Mac Hermann candidates. And as for my personal favorite player, similar to Cooper Flax for Wake Forest men's, is Sam Meza for North Carolina women's. She's a midfielder who plays all over the pitch. You can see her in many different positions throughout a match. And anytime I catch the Tar Heels play, I'm always looking out for Sam Meza. So she's a bit of a personal favorite.
All right, Alberto, and let's go into championship picks. A lot of fun. Yeah, I know, wiping the sweat. It's not easy. I don't like to do it either, but let's just have some fun with it. Why not? If we're wrong, we're wrong. So men's, women's, champ picks, let's do it.
All right. So like I mentioned, I think I like rooting for storylines, and I mentioned them already twice so far in this video. Is Washington men's soccer. Maybe choosing the #1 team in the country is perhaps a little too chalk, and for a knockout tournament, it probably is. But I think as far as the story goes and them redeeming themselves from last year's, coming up just short, I think that's the team I think will win the national championship this season. And for women's, I'm going back to the dynasty. It's North Carolina, right? The Tar Heels haven't won in 10 years, like I mentioned, and I think that winning in their backyard would be a great way to get back to the mountaintop. We've seen a lot of different teams from the ACC play in the College Cup that North Carolina has missed out on. So I think the Tar Heels winning, that's who I'm going with, and I root for the story. What can I say?
All right, you got to root for the story. Alberto, thank you so much for joining me. Loved breaking this all down and excited for men's and women's soccer getting closer to championships.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miguel.